Where are you with the Niners right now? I know you've been doing a lot of college, but the 49ers just get a 28-16 win over the Seahawks. They haven't lost since the bye. I haven't talked to you since they rolled into Philly and spanked the Eagles. And then I watched Miami last night lose to the Titans. I saw Baltimore life and death to beat the Rams. Detroit lost at Soldier Field to Chicago. I'm just looking at around the league and I'm saying, well, wait a second. Is this are the Niners going to wind up being like the last? Bengals have lost their quarterback for the year. I love the way the Bengals look, but their quarterback's done for the year. I'm out. Bills beat the Chiefs. I don't know if I like either of those teams really. I like the way the Cowboys are looking, but the Niners spanked the Cowboys, and Cowboys can't run the ball against the Niners, and they can't seem to stop the Niner run game. Philly doesn't look like the same team. Who's standing between the Niners and a sixth Lombardi? Are they the NFL's best team right now by far?
Yes, they're the best team. I still think Baltimore. Let's see that game, and the good news is we're going to get that game. But they are the best team. I give Baltimore credit. I think the Rams are. I think like I respect what Sean McVay's done since they got bad, and he's made them respectable. And that game was in the pouring rain, and Lamar looked excellent. So, yes, they're the best team. What stands between them and the Lombardi is outside of injury, is I think Baltimore, Kansas City. I thought Miami losing on Monday night, tell me if you disagree, Larry, was bad for the Niners. If you want, like, not like actually bad, but if you want to try and find the best scenario for them, I think playing Miami in the Super Bowl would be preferred to playing Baltimore or Kansas City. And I think for Miami to get to the Super Bowl, they'd need home field. I don't think they're going to Baltimore. I don't think they're going to Kansas City and winning. I know right now Kansas City doesn't look anything like the kind of Chiefs teams that win Super Bowls, and I agree with that. But the Niners don't play them next week. The Niners don't play them in the first round of the AFC playoffs. If the Niners were to play Kansas City, they'd play a version of the Chiefs that had gotten to the Super Bowl, right? So I think we have to acknowledge if you play the Chiefs, they won't look like this Chiefs. They probably will have gone on the road to Baltimore, Miami, or both in the AFC playoffs and won. So what you'd end up with is if you just concoct the scenario where you're playing the Chiefs, what you're facing is a hot Patrick Mahomes, right? In all likelihood. And that would be, even though their roster is not what it was when they won the championship, you're playing Andy Reid on 2 weeks, you're paying Patrick Mahomes. That's scary. So I do think that's like, you have to consider that, even though that's not what Kansas City looks like now. I don't think playing Miami would be scary, and we'll see. Like, I do think playing Lamar in Baltimore could be scary. And that's about it. I mean, barring an injury, that's it. Like, Dallas looks excellent. Dallas for the first time in the McCarthy era looks good enough for me, who I've repeatedly not given them probably the credit that others do, just because I don't think they beat the Niners. But when you watch them, you go, there is a lot of talent here, and it seems to work against most teams. So, I do think you have to give them, at least, to use the Steve Kerr line that I love, appropriate fear. That's not fear. It's just, I know you've kicked their ass repeatedly, but even the Rams, you beat the Rams a lot, and the Rams got the Niners when it mattered. So Detroit, Goff, that didn't scare me before they'd lost 2 or 3, before they lost to Chicago. It shouldn't scare you now. They've got his number, but that's it. That's everybody. I mean, I didn't mention Philly, and obviously I do think I think you got to give Philly a little more respect than they've gotten the last 2 weeks too.
The Philly's limping right now, but
Yeah.
we'll see if they can kind of regain their footing. And obviously behind this incredible run the 49ers have had, and this resurgence and this where they're looking like the very best team in all of football, is Brock Purdy. And I heard your partner, John, on with Cowherd this morning. I think I saw a little blurb of it on Twitter, and he was comparing him to like Drew Brees, Brock Purdy. I mean, I think it's safe to say, what I've been saying for a while, which Brock Purdy's damn good, and he may be great. I mean, he went, I think, 0 for 4 or 1 for 4, something like that, and then he was 23 of 27. He completed 76% of his passes after the first series or so, for 300 plus yards and 2 touchdowns. And, just making some amazing plays. Where are you with Brock Purdy? I know you always kind of were more of a fan of Purdy, even when others were kind of saying, hey, Trey Lance, Trey Lance, Trey Lance. I know we talked this summer. You and John were much more not on the Trey Lance bandwagon and much more in the Purdy camp, but you got to be. I mean, is this guy the MVP? And is it possible that Brock Purdy is not good or very good, but actually great?
So to me, the MVP is. I do think I do want to wait and just see what happens with the Ravens on Lamar, because when I looked like a week ago, these numbers are not MVP numbers, but then I watched him and he looked like the MVP. So when you're the quarterback of a 13-win team, if that's what they end up being, if they were to beat the Niners head to head, then you'd have to reevaluate Lamar. I know Dak now has Dak is the favorite. Brock is second. So if you're second, you're probably a legitimate MVP candidate. And in the case of Brock, he's a legitimate MVP candidate. I personally, if I had an MVP vote, which I don't, I would strongly consider giving McCaffrey my first vote. Larry, I don't know how you feel about that, because I think there's a case to be made that he is their most valuable, that he has changed them the most. But then you really take a step back and you think about what this team was with Garoppolo and the way they've opened up their offense with Jimmy, and with Brock, and it was so clear from the beginning. I remember watching them early going, I think Kyle's trying to throw the ball down the field more. And now that we have like 20 games of data, the evidence is in. He's throwing the ball down the field more and they're doing it more effectively. So, he has changed Kyle's offense. It's the closest offense that Kyle has had since his Matt Ryan offense. And it's one of the best. This is one of the best offenses of Kyle Shanahan's career, not just his Niner career, his coordinating career. His Alfred Morris offense in Washington statistically was excellent. They couldn't throw the ball. But they were one of the top offenses in the league. His Matt Ryan offense and this offense. So, he had a top offense in 19, but I think this one's better because of Brock. So yeah, he's an MVP candidate. Could he be great? He could be. Like I was really thinking a lot, and John and I will talk about it later today. And I did a video this morning about Brock and Tua, because I'm watching Tua last night, and I want your opinion on this too. I'm like, I started looking at the numbers, just all the PFF numbers, and like every number I looked at, the first 4 or 5 categories, I realized that Brock and Tua were like 1 and 2, like boom, 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 boom. So I started over. I started writing them down because I was like, how many of these categories are they close? And it's like 95% of them. But it doesn't look that way, right? When you watch it, I don't think they're the same player. I think Brock's better. Some key categories where Brock is better. He turns the ball over less when he throws it downfield, and he's been much, much, much better against pressure than Tua has been this year. And I think he escapes more pressure. He escapes more sacks than Tua does.
He's a little bit more decisive with his movements in the pocket than Tua, to me.
So this is where I need Tua gets the ball out faster than anybody.
Right.
So in that sense, he is decisive, right? I think that Brock is faster once that first read is in there. I think Brock is quicker at making the next thing happen, which is, the game. So that was my theory, because Brock's time to throw is slower, but, especially on like the deep balls, but I think he does it better than Tua does. His completion percentage is higher, right? Usually you start getting into the time to throw as it goes up, that completion percentage goes up. Well, his time to throw is lower than Tua's, but his completion percentage is basically the same. It's like 1/10 of a point higher or whatever. So,
I'll say from watching them, Guy, what stands out to me is that Tua seems like he's throwing to guys that have more separation on the defender. And I don't know if I have a stat in front of me that will verify that or not. Just from watching both of them, my sense of it is that Brock his accuracy is a little bit better. He can throw it into tighter windows. His ball placement's a little bit more precise. Tua's throwing the ball to guys that seem like they've broken into the free and they have more separation on the defender.
Could be. I mean, the throw that Tua had last night to Tyreek at like the 5-yard line or whatever it was, up the, it was like far upper right of or upper left, I guess, was a ridiculous throw and a ridiculous catch.
Yeah.
But the way I put it is like, I think Brock seems more under control. Like Brock's games tend to be a little cleaner, I think, Tua's have like some weird variations of they can have some plays that look wild. Brock makes some wild plays too, but I don't think they're the same. The point of this is not that they're the same. I also think Brock's arm is stronger.
Then Tua.
Yeah. And we don't have Tua didn't do all the combine stuff, so we don't have the 10-yard split data and all that stuff that we have that's the beauty of Brock being such a low prospect is he did all the workout stuff, that most of these guys don't do. So yeah, you asked, can he be a star? The answer is yes. But I guess what I'm saying is all this stuff takes, if you're going to be a star, like if you're really a star, then you got to do it for a few years, and that's where like John's comp to Breeze, people will do to me, the comp to Russ is interesting. Any guy that wins a championship early in their career, I think it really just kind of sets you free to be yourself and takes a lot of pressure off of having to prove anything once you get that championship. And Brock plays pretty pressure free. Like, I think Tua, sometimes I think he's a little beaten down by everything he's been through in the NFL, all the controversy that he's been in the center of to no fault of his own. And Brock doesn't carry any of that baggage.
Brock, to me, and John made this point today, and I think it's appropriate. He's a better athlete with better movement ability than anybody gives him credit for. They look at his size and they don't, the one thing that we've been talking about for, a couple of years now on Brock is that 1.54 or 1.55 10-yard split. To put that in perspective, Tyreek Hill is 1.50. So I mean, Tyreek Hill's a blur, and the fastest guy and uncoverable, and he's electric, and yet Brock Purdy is got a 10-yard split that's in the same ballpark. I mean, 1.54
feels like it should invalidate 10-yard splits.
I know. Well, and then you think of the other amazing stat is that Tom Brady's got a better 3-cone drill than DK Metcalf. But to me, that was more about DK's probably. Maybe he didn't try that hard in the combine drill, and maybe Brady really tried hard, and somebody got got their finger wrong on the stopwatch or something. But Purdy's very, very quick, and the escapability is there. John actually kind of compared him to saying that he was kind of like what the Browns wanted Baker Mayfield to be.
Sure, absolutely.
But I don't know if Baker's just I don't think Baker's is a consistent personality. And so, Brock, I think, is a way more mature guy and a better leader and more constant, more consistent as a person, and maybe just a better person overall than Baker. But
I would add this too, Larry, right? Like Baker, it turned out, and it turned out immediately to the point you referenced, it turned out really quickly that what worked in college athletically did not work in the NFL for him. And that's not the case for Brock. But I also think he's a more under control player. Somebody asked me today, what's the difference between Wentz and Purdy? I was like, it's a great question because there's two major, there's all the physical differences. And then there's just the simple fact that his teammates like him. I know it's a weird comparison.
Wentz? I mean, Wentz is a bigger guy, and he played at
he's
North
a premium
Dakota
prospect
State.
is the point, right?
Yeah. Wentz's career arc makes no sense to me. He was a MVP candidate, and everything just kind of evaporated for him.
I know. Well, and that's the part about
huge negative plays.
Yeah. I was just going to say that's the part of that Foles championship that will get forgotten to history is that Foles didn't just save the day. Foles saved the day for a guy who was about to win the MVP when he got hurt.
Yeah.